Lord Vadney Kimberly Carroll Poon-Grebe, the 13th Marquis de took notes as he gazed across the dewy fields. The girl was 16, he guessed, maybe 17, but so unlike the girls of similar age at court in the city. Such girls were possessed of an awful, precocious guile. So worldly, so knowing, so unrattled by Lord Vadney's most painstaking efforts at deviance. He recalled one young lady, the daughter of a baron, who had giggled lasciviously at the collection of decks of playing cards, all explicitly, anatomically illustrated, his blue 52s, he called them, which he kept in a glass-topped display in his private rooms in his house in town. Giggled, without so much as the slightest tint of blush on her powdered cheek, without the tiniest flicker of trepidation. "Why, Lord Vadney," she cooed, "you've got the beginnings of a promising collection here. You must someday view my own small gallery. Have you anything yet from the hill tribes of Mount Venus? I don't think they play cards, but their beadwork is absolutely filthy." The evening, Vadney recollected ruefully, had been an enormous disappointment. For a baron's daughter, she had proved surprisingly aggressive. He had nearly ruined a perfectly fitted waistcoat as he slipped out the library window. Driven from one's own home. The morals of the younger generation of the city were quite shocking. Lord Vadney feared for the future. He was at times quite despondent, thinking of his own shock at the unshockable youth of the capital. But here, in the countryside, among the farm folk, the rustic stock, among the barmaids, the milkmaids, the eggmaids, was that a thing? The Marquis, despite his vast holdings in this region, was not well versed in the life details of its inhabitants. He was not specifically aware of the degree of difference between this type of plump servant girl and that. Though this is not to say he was uninterested in them, or in their differences. He was in fact quite keen to learn the differences, just not those specific to the particular chores assigned to them by their cooper fathers, blacksmith brothers, or poacher husbands. No, Lord Vadney Poon-Grebe was a rare connoisseur. A man with appetites both broad and deep, though uncommon. This much he had hinted, even stated outright. "I am a man with appetites both broad and deep, though uncommon," to many a dinner guest, visiting diplomat, page, court alchemist, apothecary, drunken cleric, jester, barber, and bone setter in or just off his path. By now, he must have really quite a burgeoning notoriety. Haven't he? Must be regarded with a mixture of prurient curiosity, revulsion, and respect, probably. I mean, if you had to guess. It'd be in that neighborhood, between evil Svengali and demi-demon, maybe? A little eerie, anyway? Odd? Creep. Well, no, not creep. Creep didn't have anywhere near the elegance, the nefarious punch, the murky appeal and invitation to depraved depths that he'd... "Oi, you! Creep!" It was a surprisingly deep and powerful voice for a lass of only 16, maybe 17. There is a downside to the delightful heft of a farm-fed country girl. Lord Vadney tucked the notebook in which he'd been recording his thoughts about the startlingly voiced creature into his masterfully mended waistcoat. After drawing a line through the entire brief entry, he painfully jabbed himself in the hip with a small stylus and trudged mysteriously, devilishly, said the voice in Vadney's head, back into the encroaching twilight that spawned him, falling only once, and then into the night that spawned him, mysteriously, devilishly. Or as mysteriously and devilishly as allowed by the heavy boots upon which that dratted worrywart Ratch had insisted. Mysteriously, devilishly, he trudged. Encroaching twilight. Damn. Marchioness Camilla Fitzvictim Poon-Grebe cuddled her fat son Nelson, on a divan of scrolled exotic wood and luxurious upholstery. The viewer is offered the description in hope of sparing him or her the embarrassment of an understandable misapprehension. It would be easy to mistake the aforementioned tableau for another. For example, a teak caravan built by colorblind gypsies transporting a powdered egret, actively trying to consume a whole live hog in a command performance for an audience of just 2. For Lady Poon-Grebe and Nelson were joined by the Viscountess de Luche, Lady Marianne Sauvignon, and Countess Hertz Nuptial, Lady Prunella Mantis, of whom, of course, you have heard. It is perhaps unlikely that any would come to such a conclusion, but we seek to avoid any awkwardness where possible. "Egad!" cried Vadney, ducking into a closet. "Gypsies!" He'd entered the room from the front hallway, where Ratch had helped him remove his mud-caked boots and breeches, and the small stylus sticking from his hip. "No, sir," said Ratch into the closet. "Merely your wife and stepson entertaining." "Merely?" scoffed the Marquis. "Merely my wife and stepson." He pushed his way farther back into the closet, struggling to pull shut the heavy paneled door behind him. "There is nothing the slightest bit mere, nor entertaining, now that you mention it, about anyone in that room, and you know it. Now let go at once, I command you." Ratch showed no sign of heeding his master's voice, though there are explanations as likely as brazen insubordination. It is possible that Ratch simply did not hear his lord's piteous entreaties from behind the ermines, minks, and the other sartorial sacrificed former woodland creatures into which Vadney was madly burrowing. Had such creatures themselves had Vadney's instincts, they might not have been hanging there in that coat closet in the first place. It is also entirely possible that Vadney's pleas were never made audibly at all, however he may have thought and intended to cry out. It has been observed and reported that in the presence of his nearest family, the Marquis often behaved most peculiarly, losing one or more of his customary senses and or faculties. The point became moot when Ratch's heretofore unrelenting grip on the door's crystal knob gave way suddenly. Vadney had stood as much chance of wresting the door from his servant's grips as he had of bare-handedly launching Nelson over the castle's battlements. But Ratch had ceased his share of the struggle. In other words, the Marquis was an absolute lock to slam shut the door, had he not braced his foot in the frame for leverage. So forcefully did he slam said foot in the now uncontested door that his scream was sure, he quailed at the thought, to disrupt his wife's earnest conference. Amazingly, miraculously, mercifully, she paid this coat-closet conflict no evident attention, cradling, so much as her limited wingspan would allow, the strangely silent, Vadney half noticed, Nelson, and conversing with her companions. Vadney made an escape, temporary he knew all too well, that no limp could render uncelebratory. Lord Vadney lifted the glass to his pale lips and took a tentative sip. He swallowed with his eyes closed and nodded slightly. "Leave this bottle close by and bring another," he said. "Shall I bring some to her ladyship, my lord? Oh God, is she—" Lord Poon-Grebe scanned the room hastily, as if he might be snuck up upon and seized physically. He spied no such pressing danger and sank back into the brocaded wing-back chair. "No. Unless she calls for you directly, you have my permission, and the survival sense, I suspect, to avoid her as a general rule." "Yes, my lord." "And Ratch," said Lord Poon-Grebe to the exceedingly weary-looking servant. "Yes, my lord." "Do try to avoid mention of me, even if called directly. I'd rather not be on her mind." "Mum's the word, sir. But I believe that her ladyship may request you at some point tonight, sir." "Did she say something, Ratch?" Lord Vadney's voice cracked ever so slightly. "She alluded, sir, yes." "She alluded me, Ratch? Or is it to me? Alluded to me? Sir, what exactly did she say, Ratch?" "Her ladyship, sir, upon seeing me descend to the wine cellar for this first bottle, said, I believe it was, sir, If that enfeebled sot cannot ascend of his own volition when I call, Ratch, I shall have you truss him and hoist him feet first, cracking his skull with each step. Lord Vadney grimaced. Yes, Ratch, you're right. She eluded me. Quite assertively, sir. Well then, Lord Vadney puffed, rising from the chair. Don't bother fetching that second bottle to me. No, sir. Vadney grabbed his glass and the uncorked bottle. I shall be in the cellar if she beckons. Yes, sir. Shall I ready the ropes?